We see the last stand of a centuries-old warrior, the unraveling of Imu's worst nightmare, and the path for escape from Egghead finally open for the Strawhats. So, let's make sure we waste no time and get into One Piece chapter 1122.
And starting with the cover series, we get a really cool redraw of some fan art that a certain boy from Aichi drew 22 years ago. And this is just a really cool homage that does have a ton of detail. And even though it does take us away from Yamato's journey through Wano for another chapter, it's really cool, especially once you get the extra context.
And for that context, just to provide a little bit of backstory on the Smoker redrawing we see here, while it is a pit stop away from Yamato's journey, this is a really thoughtful homage by Oda to a fellow mangaka, Kohei Horikoshi, who has drawn the My Hero Academia series for over the past decade. And Horikoshi initially submitted his own fan art of Smoker all the way back during Alabasta's publication as just a fan. And a decade later, Horikoshi had released the initial chapter of his own series, My Hero. And this week is the publication of My Hero's final chapter. So this is just a way of Oda to pay respect to a fellow successful mangaka that he even played a hand in inspiring. And he did a similar concept when Naruto ended as well during Dressrosa on the cover series. You see Luffy eating a meal with Naruto. But to see one of his fellow fans turn colleague and now retiring their own series is not only just a nice respect by Oda and a thoughtful thing to do, but again speaks to the longevity of the series he's creating here.
It really does, and it ties in really nicely to the title of the chapter, The Time is at Hand. And this is a reference to the question Emet asked a few chapters back regarding if it is time for Joyboy to use it. But we'll see an explanation regarding what it is time for at the end of the chapter. So, let's build our way into it, starting on page 1.
And understandably, people around the world are shocked to hear that Vegapunk declared that the fate of the world now lays in the hands of pirates, essentially. And that the quest for the One Piece, while it's been coveted for a while, is now creating another sense of continued panic for another pirate era and more islands to sink. And what, the best thing they have to hope for is some pirates to save them?
Very, like you said, very understandable. I'd be freaking out, and the people of this ice place, I would assume Drum Island, are again still focused on the are we gonna sink too? Like everything's going to hell, and you're telling me the best we've got is pirates who, for most of these people, have been mostly just running amok and making chaos throughout the world. And then we also get to see a good representation of the excitement that this gives to the pirates across the world as they cheer on that the world's greatest genius just confirmed the One Piece is real.
This is arguably probably bigger than the spark Whitebeard gave to the pirate era, because he confirmed it was real, but now Vegapunk, a man of science, is not only saying it's real, but it holds the fate of pretty much the world in its hands too. So I imagine that this is going to create a way bigger spark, maybe even than when the pirate era started, because if the citizens know that this holds the fate of the world into it, I wouldn't put it past some citizens to take to the seas as well.
Absolutely. And along with all of the free pirates, we even see that the incarcerated pirates that are within Impel Down are also reveling in the power shift and chaos this announcement will cause throughout the world, declaring that it's about time pirates ran the show.
We had already seen that the broadcast was reaching the prison of Impel Down back in chapter 1113, where we do see Doflamingo and Magellan listening to it together. But it is a nice way of showing just how impactful this broadcast has been on the entirety of the pirating world, incarcerated or free, even if you're not a pirate yet. Every one of them is getting inspired by this.
Yeah, and it also shows, on the flip side, just how powerless the Marines and world government truly are, that they can't stop this broadcast from going out to even the lowliest of pirates who are imprisoned in the most high-level prison of the world.
It's kind of just a flex by the smartest man in the world, though. He is just saying, I can override your entire Den Mushi.
Yeah, you can't stop me.
Telepathic system. And yeah, I'm getting my point across. But somebody else who has a lot more reservation about this, that we also do start to see their reaction of, is Kobe on the bottom of that page. And we don't get to see his initial stance at first, but we do flash back to the first time he met Luffy, where Luffy tells him straight up, yeah, I'm going to find the One Piece. That thing that you keep people tell me isn't real, that is going to be only claimed by the best in the world, that's me. I'm doing that.
Yeah, and I think we always knew. I mean, he said as much, even all the way back then, that they were going to have to oppose each other. But this is where it really gets cemented, that they are going to face each other. And Kobe is going to try and stop Luffy from achieving his dream of obtaining the One Piece. And it really does make a little more sense when you consider it from his perspective, that he sees that as Luffy would have to be a ruler that makes people bend to him. And that's just not a world that the government would be okay with.
I mean, Kobe obviously loves Luffy as a friend, but I think he also is a bit more pragmatic, and he understands that if the person who finds the One Piece is in charge of how the world is shaped, I love Luffy, but he is too stupid for that.
True.
He will do something too dumb, and he's not wrong, but I think this is also why it took so long to build up Kobe's character. They knew if they wanted to have him oppose Luffy, he had to have come a long way, and he has come a long way. So now he's made it his stance. He's going to oppose him in the end.
Yeah, no, and when I first read him saying, I have to stop you from achieving your dream, I was like, who does he think he is? But then I stepped back and I realized, you know what, he can say that. He's one of the few good Marines left, and really represents what they're supposed to represent. And on to page 3, I just love everything about this page, because the way we ended last chapter, looking at all of the major players that are going to be chasing the One Piece in this final saga, we get to see 3 different major groups of them. The first being Kobe, and the beginning of their quest down this final stretch.
I'm really interested to see more of Kobe in the final saga. I think that's going to be a great addition as seeing his character, but somebody who's a little bit less noble is that second player you might have mentioned, being our goat and beautiful beloved god, Chairman Buggy, who...
Hey, props to him.
He's rallying the troops.
He rallied the troops. He did a good job. Like, his followers can be stupid, but this one I actually understand.
It's also him playing into what his real dream is, so I think it has a level of, like, sincerity to it. But he is playing strategically. He knows that Mihawk and Crocodile run the show, but if he makes himself irreplaceable to the followers, they can't do anything to him. And I think that's kind of what he's doing here, because he also addresses, it's not just going to be mine, it's going to be our world. And they all just adore this man for it.
Yeah, and while obviously Mihawk and Crocodile ultimately still have the control over him, and, you know, they tell him just sit down, okay, but he is doing this the right way. He is making these people absolutely love him and follow him to the ends of the earth, and for good reason. Like, that's how you rally the troops.
He is a man of the people, and he always will be, and that's why Buggy's gonna find the One Piece.
Anyway, last but definitely not least, on to someone we all can agree cannot get the One Piece. We see Blackbeard communicating with Devin about Caribou and his information, and she really shows her ruthless nature in this moment, where even before they've heard what he has to say, she's like, well, we could just kill him.
She collects pretty women's head for, like, a sport.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, she's bad.
It's good reinforcement of the fact that she's just bloodthirsty.
Yeah, they kind of need to have everyone else there just to kind of reel her in, and that does include Blackbeard, who in this case, he plays strategically as well. I mean, he's not stupid, and he understands he's not going to say no to an opportunity for information, so he just says, bring him to me. I'll put him down if his information's a dud. And
yeah, that's pretty hard, not gonna lie.
I think that Caribou understands that too. That's why he wouldn't just approach him unless he had something important, which he does. He has information about 2 of the ancient weapons.
He knows way too much.
And to finish off this page, to move away from all those players and back to the ones we kind of want to see win, obviously, we move back to Egghead as Vegapunk again starts to talk about Joyboy, and it feels like he might reveal more about what his history would have been, but I don't know if we're going to get anything else out of that, thanks to Warkery.
No. It had to happen eventually. There have been a lot of times where it felt like he could have stopped, but he kept going. But this seems to be the final nail in the coffin.
I'm not predicting it anymore, but I would say it's a pretty good chance that it's over, because when Warkery does land his charge attack on Emet again and sends him flying, we take a look inside him and we do see the transmission snail. Not only has X on his eyes at first, but the next panel you see his shell explode.
Big explosion, yeah.
And unfortunate thing about snails is most of their organs are in their shell, so I'd say it's pretty done for
Biologically speaking, he's toast.
Yeah, he's not looking too hot. And as sad as that is, the Giants themselves are also quite devastated just to see their cool iron buddy get messed up even more.
I felt that. I was right there with them.
But based on the fact that they do have the chance to sail away and they can't really help, they can't do anything about it. So they just kind of have to watch as Emet literally is making his last stand by himself.
And speaking of last stands, despite the brave sacrifice of Atlas, at the start of the next page, we see that Nostro is right back, tracking down the Sunny, falling to the sea below, and that just shows that their healing factor is crazy, because for all intents and purposes, he should be done. Like, she exploded on him, and he's just right back.
She blew half his face off.
Yeah, and he's back unfazed, untouched.
Before they even touch the water. Like, this is a matter of seconds going by. And before he can close the distance, you do see Zoro's ready to, like, clash with them once again. But we're not gonna get another Zoro Nostro strike just yet. We again go back to Emet, talking to himself, and talking to his old friend Joyboy, saying sorry once more.
And at the same time, he's also apologizing to his new friend, Luffy. And he seems to have finally processed that even after his centuries-long slumber, the person that he thought he was addressing, Joyboy, who Luffy does seem to very much resemble, is not the same person. And so they begin speaking through the voice of all things once more across the waters.
And you can tell it's definitely like a telepathic communication, I guess kind of similar to what the Gorosei have that they've shown, but Luffy is on the Great Eric sailing away and Emet's on the shore, but they can hear each other very clearly, and it seems Luffy also finally reaches a point of understanding, because it's just been a comical back and forth bit between them so far, but...
Also, the Gorosei comparison is good, because it is the same speech bubble type thing.
Yeah, it's very much just an internal communication that nobody else really can access besides these two, so it's just a conversation between the two, and I don't know if it's something about Gear 5, but Luffy not only seems more battle intelligent, but even emotionally intelligent, which he is usually very emotionally in touch, and he processes it well. He's understanding that, oh, you've just mistaken me for an old friend. But it's more than just a mix-up for Emet, because he has a lot of deeply seated regrets and sadness tied to Joyboy that he felt like he was obligated to make better. And I don't know if he feels like he can do so for Luffy in the same way, but he knows there is something else he can do for him.
Well, and I love how his ties to Joyboy get tied into what Luffy's true goals are, to be king of the pirates. Because he hears him say king, and that kind of strikes it to him. Oh, let me tell you, I also want to be king. And I think that really draws Emet to realize this is the time.
Exactly. He even said so himself, I failed to make Joyboy king. And he only says king, so, I mean, in my opinion, it's more likely he probably means king of the world, as the Battle of the Void Century resulted in there being a king of the world, being Imusama. And it's possible Joyboy would have been in that throne had he won, but he didn't, and so Emet feels as though he's failed. But now, after 8 centuries, he feels like he has the chance to maybe, like you said, usher in a new king. So he asked Luffy his name.
Yeah, and that's where we really get to see just some really cool art start to unfold. Because Luffy, as he always does, I'm Monkey D. Luffy, I'm going to be king of the pirates. And I love, of all the things he said, what he keyed in on was the D in his name.
I also love that regardless of what form he's in, sun god or not, Luffy is Luffy.
Yeah, it's always this. It's never changing. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, I'm going to be king of the pirates.
But you are correct. The fact he keys in very specifically on the D initial,
And then just...
and that's all that he needed. He said, oh, okay. And I imagine that's something he knew. Maybe Joyboy had that same initial, but it was something familiar that convinced him to be enough. And as he hears this, you see inside, there's just a tiny piece of rope tied up in Emet that comes undone. And as soon as it does, all hell breaks loose as Conqueror's Haki is just pouring out of this Iron Giant all the way across Egghead, all the way out onto the waters of the seas around it. Everybody within vicinity of this island is feeling the pulse of this blast.
I mean, that might have reached the islands next, like the marine islands nearby. Because this is crazy. And I mean, you see it a page later with Dahl and Pomsky, where they're just like, who is doing this? How is this happening? Like, they're even questioning, is this Haki? Because it's just so overpowering.
And as for the mechanic that it is, the only other thing I could think of when I saw this was those wind knots that Haradas shows Nami when she was studying with Arya. He has the 3 where it's like, oh, it's a breeze, it's a gale, this one's a strong wind. But what we just saw was what I could only describe as a hockey nuke.
King Conqueror's, straight up a hockey nuke. Here's a bomb, gone.
And as a result of that, every Marine we see on this page is just knocked out, foaming at the mouth. They're devastated. None of them could withstand this level of Conqueror's Haki. And it's just so potent that as we move on to the next page and you continue to see the spread of this devastation.
It took multiple pages to show just how big this was.
It was just all dedicated to showing the wake of how big this explosion was. The only Marines that you see still conscious are Dahl and Pomsky. That is it.
Yeah, and they're still blown away by how strong it is. And those are Vice Admirals.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other Vice Admirals got knocked out. This is insane. It is such a potent level of Conqueror's Haki that even the Gorosei themselves cannot withstand taking this blast in their yokai forms and are just knocked back to old man form immediately.
Yeah, no, that was actually crazy to me. And that took me something a couple times I had to read it over. Just be like, that really sent the rest of them back. Only Saturn's even left at this point.
And you do see Mars sitting in the back of the couch in the castle.
Favorite panel. Really, guys?
Yeah, as we get into page 9, back at the castle, you do see the 3 elders that were transported to the island, back in the room of authority with Mars. Just the most straight-faced, really, guys? Like, you couldn't do it.
You too? More like?
Yeah, that's true. He got set back
Who was back first? Yeah.
But it's pretty clear they failed at their mission pretty hard. And as for why it's just these guys, as a quick reminder, Saturn did take a ship to the island, so it's not like he was magically transported there like the rest of them. He was physically on the island, so I don't believe he was able to be knocked back through their, transportation circle, or whatever you want to call it.
Right, and as we do see later, that he was also knocked back to old man form. It's just, he returned to exactly where he was, because, like you said, he hadn't transported.
But nobody's really gonna envy the position of whatever Gorosei has to go tell Imu the bad news, because we see his own reaction on the next part of the panel, and he's just having a full-blown panic, anger attack. It's clear he knew something might have been coming for all this time. That's why he was so keen to get rid of the poneglyphs and the D members, but it's just shaking in anger.
Well, and Imu clearly recognized that was Joyboy. Before all of this, obviously knew there was a hand in this, but he basically just heard for the first time in 800 years Joyboy's voice. And yeah, I mean, understandably, that would drive someone insane. That after all this time, they're still haunting you like that.
He can't get away.
Nope.
And because of how rattled he is, I wanted to pose our first question because Emu has ruled from the shadows for 800 years. But it's very clear he cannot run from certain parts of the enemies he's created. So, do you think it would be possible that throughout this saga we might see Emu get more involved in the public eye? Just in an effort to retain power, he might not even care about ruling from the shadows. He just wants to suppress anybody else that could do that.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, every other Veil has already been unmasked by Vegapunk, so why not, you know? Like, just go all out at this point. Commit to it.
He would be a lot more intimidating, honestly, I think, as a villain if he had no bars held anymore.
Yeah, if he stepped out from the darkness and said, hey, I run the world, bow or else.
Which he very much probably could. We have no idea where his power ends, but I would be very interested to hear what you guys think as to whether or not you think Emu will continue to rule from the shadows, or whether you think he'll become more of that public menace. However, just to put us back on track, on to page 10, after this massive explosion, where the majority of the Gorosei are sent back to Marijois, we finally kind of take a breath. We see the chance for escape to arrive as the Sunny lands on the waters next to the Great Eric safely.
Yeah, and obviously, Luffy is just ecstatic. Glad to see you guys made it. And while Chopper, Jinbei, and Usopp are just glad to be alive in the first place, the rest of the crew and the Giants are mostly just shocked at how the immediate danger has just basically disappeared from them, all thanks to the robot with the crazy hockey that just overpowered everyone and blew it all away.
Yeah. A 10 times Buster Call, don't worry about it.
Nope.
Hockey bomb. Just no problem.
I know Robin's sitting there like, how? What? Where were you?
Even Dory and Broggy, I think these people are legends in their own right.
Well, and they've been laughing through everything.
But they're shocked.
Yeah. And, like, who can blame them? This is unheard of. Never before.
But despite all of this chaos going on, you do also get a very humane moment from Nami, as she isn't quick to forget just because of the massive display of power. The other people who made their sacrifice, so they even had those seconds to make an escape. And she talks about Edison and Atlas laying down their lives.
I do love that they both get that mention and that, like, honor, basically.
I mean,
you guys need to know what they did.
Absolutely. Like we just said, Atlas may have given them seconds, but because of those seconds, they actually made it. So it's very honorable of her.
And they wouldn't have had the shot in the first place if it weren't for Edison and the cloud technology.
No. Everyone F in the chat.
Yeah, big F's in chat.
For Atlas and Edison.
R.I.P. in peace.
However, as we continue to move forward on the journey, after all this explosion, all that is left after this massive detonation is just the shell of Emmet's body. It looks like his legs are gone. His arm that was taken off is still gone. It's just a husk sitting in front of Saturn, just back in his human form, staring him down.
And before we travel into the end of the chapter, I do just want to say, I'm really interested to see what happens with him. Like, how's he gonna get off the island? Could he do something with Emet just standing there? You know, that is a cliffhanger in and of itself.
I feel like he's so angry he might just destroy him, just turn him into scrap metal.
But is he stuck in old man form now? Like, can he, you know what I mean? He got transformed out of it. I guess they clearly have their insane powers, but I mean, he's still been humbled.
That's true. He might face worse fallout from Emu than he would from this.
True.
However, as this is going on, and they're just standing there looking at each other, we take a bit of a flashback into this great warrior's long history. And we first see those similar words we heard before, where Joyboy tells Emet that the time is at hand, and you see a silhouette of Joyboy speaking to him from atop of some square building, maybe a poneglyph of some sort. We have no idea. But what's important is what's being said.
Yeah, because we then cut to a very close-up silhouette shot where we can see clearly his straw hat. And he tells him his plan to gather all his most powerful hockey inside him to help Emet for a time where he needs him most, because he's going to outlive him. So he knows that he still wants to be there to protect him in his darkest hour, either for himself or even what he specifically says, or someone that you care about.
Yeah, and I do think it's kind of adorable, Emmet's own response internally to these kinds of things. It kind of reminds me of Little Oars Jr. It's just very simple, big-bodied guy where he's like, "Aw, that makes me sad.
Big old teddy bear.
I don't want you to go." However, Joyboy is very in touch with the soft side of Emet, as you see on page 12, that he explains the purpose of this plan. He knows that Emet would be sad, and so to protect Emet or whoever he deems worth saving, he puts this knot with all that potent hockey in it so that when the time is at hand, he'll still be there to save him, which is just such a sweet gesture.
This I don't find myself saying this very often about One Piece, but it was cute.
No, it was adorable.
Cute. It was cute.
I also love Emmet's little outfit with his
Overalls.
overalls.
His little doe eyes on the left leg.
It's adorable.
Can't help it. I want to pinch his little cheek. And then we do get to conclude the chapter on that special moment with Joyboy just reassuring him that even after he's gone, he'll still be there for him. He'll still be able to protect him.
But he does also assure him, he's like, "Oh, that's ages and ages away." And we do see some interesting features on Joyboy also in this panel. If you take your eyes away from the words for a moment to look at that silhouette with his arms spread wide, it's a bit odd that his right arm and right leg do seem to be potentially prosthetic. One looks kind of like a peg leg, and his arm kind of does look like a Lego arm with the way it's shaped.
I honestly think both his legs kind of look different, you know what I mean?
It's possible.
Yeah.
But some very particular features, very piratey features, and while it does kind of end on a sort of macabre note of Emet reflecting and having that happy dancey moment, and then on the other side of it you see he says he hopes he doesn't get lonely. He gives a little laugh, and then you see the light dim out of Emmet's eyes. This warrior's long journey seems like it has finally reached an end, and he finally gets the chance to rest.
Yeah, R.I.P. the boy. Love him. Sad we couldn't get more of him. But now that Egghead has all but concluded, we've definitely reached the end. We're moving on. We actually wanted to ask your personal opinion. Which arc do you personally like more? Wano or Egghead? Because they have taken up a lot of the recent story and also been two of the most pivotal when it comes to the overall transition of the story into the final saga.
Absolutely. And there's a bit of differences between the two. Obviously, Wano is much longer, but it's hard to deny that the peaks of both of these arcs have been incredible as a fan to experience. So we wanted to ask, which did you prefer? Because there's no wrong answer.
Absolutely not, no.
I am curious where the fan base is leaning, so we wanted to hear what you guys have to say. So feel free to leave those in the comments down below. But thanks to Emet and the dormant hockey Joyboy imbued within him, the Gorosei have been humbled, the Strawhats and the Giant Warrior Pirates are safe, and Vegapunk's announcement has sparked a new generation of piracy amidst the One Piece world. Elbaf is getting closer on the horizon, and the story and the secrets of the Void Century are just around the corner. So make sure you tune back in so you can be a part of these historic revelations along with us by hitting that like button just to spread the love. comment what you think of the chapter and as Egghead as a whole now. Subscribe to join our growing pirate fleet, and as always, don't forget,
Be crew!